Wanda Carpenter here with us, who serves as our bully prevention coordinator. So we're always excited. I know you all may have met, you were on last week. You had the privilege of meeting Tawanda and her sharing about bully prevention and the things that we can do in that area. So I'll go ahead and pause and stop talking so that my colleagues can greet you if they want.
Thank you, Latrell, and good evening. And I won't say a lot because I want us to get into it. Just welcome and thank you for coming and or returning. We're so excited to talk with you.
Absolutely. Tawanda, you want to say hi?
Hi, I am here as a parent tonight learning. So even though I'm in a department, as you said, Latrell, this is ongoing learning. And so here, I'm here to engage and as a parent.
I love it. I love it. Look, that says a lot that you want to learn from us after hours, you know?
Yes, it's a lot.
That says a lot. Yay. Leah said, I love that. Yes, yes, yes. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking with you about self-awareness and responsible decision-making and what it means to be an emotional coach for your child. Let me tell you, I love this session. It's lots of good nuggets and things that are meaningful. And so we hope that you walk away with a lot of great tips and strategies that you can implement in your home. So we'll go ahead and get started, get right into it. We know that you've seen this next slide over and over again, if this is your third time. And let me just go ahead and tell you, you'll see it over and over again because this is a slide that we have, that we like to include because it has our vision on it, right? And vision gives us sight to see. And so it keeps us make sure that we're on point and allows us to, see where we're going. And so our goal as a district is to transform the learning and life outcomes of all children. So that includes my babies, your babies, that includes everybody's babies, because that's our vision as a district, right? And as we look at our SEL vision statement, our SEL vision statement it's also about you and it's also about me, right? Cynthia, can you move forward?
I'm sorry.
Can you move forward? Thank you. As we look at our SEL vision statement, it says that through social emotional learning, Guilford County Schools nurture safe, supportive, and equitable learning spaces where adults feel confident, empowered, and responsible for helping students develop into productive and responsible citizens who thrive in college career life. Let me tell you, I love this SEL vision. And let me tell you why I love this SEL vision, right? Is again, that it's about adults feeling confident, right? I told you all that I had a 19-year-old, and so she graduated in 2019. She graduated from Guilford County Schools in 2019. And one of the things that I asked myself when she walked across that stage was, some parents might have been like, oh my gosh, like this is so exciting. And, we're just, over the moon, right? I'm sitting there asking myself, Lord, did I help create a responsible human? Like, is this person ready for the world? Did I do everything that I needed to do, in order to make her successful or help her be successful, right? And so this vision to me talks specifically about that. It's about being in a space where even as adults, we feel confident that when our children walk across that stage, we help give them the tools that they need in order to be able to, like I like to call it, not just survive, but to be able to thrive in college, career, and in life, right? And so that's what our SEL department is all about, is giving you tools, empowering you, helping you feel more confident to help your student, right? And so I shared with you that, or you probably heard us say this before, but a large portion of our job is educating the educators in our district about their social emotional learning. And so this is a special time for us because we get to spend time with parents because we know that that's probably, I'm sure I always like to call it, that's my first job, right? Is to be able to be a parent. And so thank you again. Hopefully when you look at our SEL vision, you're able to see alignments with our district mission and our district mission, vision, and values. So we'll go ahead and move forward. If you've been with us, you know that we always do an SEL openers and SEL opener, and SEL opener is part of our 3 signature practices. And so our SEL opener tonight is, what's your superpower? What is your parent's superpower? And so we want to give you an opportunity to reflect and think about what it is that you are doing well. Sometimes we like, ooh, I'm not doing that right. I'm not doing that good. I need to work on that. But I want you to give yourself a moment to talk about what it is that you are doing right. What is it that you're doing right? And I want you to call that out. You can unmute and share. We're a small group, so you can unmute and share, or you can put your superpower in the chat box. And I'm going to pick on Tawanda and Cynthia and ask them to share their parent superpower with the group.
I'll share.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I'll share. I did it this morning, so I'm going to share the same one, Tawanda, so you can think. I will go with reflective. And being reflective is also one of my core values. And so I try really hard to think about what's working and what's not working and what I can do better and do differently. I try to teach my children to do the same thing, and I engage my husband as well. And so we're just always thinking about how we can improve in all areas as parents and in other ways as well.
That's awesome. That's great. Tawanda?
Well, today I'm going to go with the here and the now. Because if you would have asked this question this morning, it would have been totally different. And so I'm going to steal someone's chat. I came in the house nagging because the dog hadn't been taken out. So, it was a whole lot of that. So the trail also reflected. I do have a 10th grader, you guys, and I'm, going back to our mission as a GCS employee, as a parent. Am I preparing my daughter for the world? So, and that's why I do a lot of nagging. Good nagging, good nagging.
That's your superpower. I love it. What are we seeing in the chat for those of us that are commenting in the chat? What is in the chat?
So we have encouraging independence, caring and patience, humor and empathy first and foremost. Oh, it moved. Hold on. Oh, I didn't get
attentive,
okay.
Supportive.
Thank you. I was trying to finish that. That said, developing more of the reducing the stressful response and the meltdowns. Yeah, I'm proud that I can listen to my son, looking him in his eyes when he is talking. Okay, good stuff.
I like that.
Supporting without pressure. I think you read these last few. Today, it was a bad day for me and my son, so I feel that I don't have what it takes for my son to be successful. That's never true. We can all have bad days. But when your son sees you bounce back from that, that is your superpower. That you can have a bad day and get up and keep right on moving.
Yep, absolutely. Because let me tell you, I've had many a bad days.
Many.
Remember I said this was year 19. I've had many a bad days where I'm like, oh Lord, this is not gonna be good. And I love this that I really appreciate you for being vulnerable and sharing that information with us, because this is a safe place, and I want us to be able to have those real and honest conversations during this time together, right? And I just right now, if you've had a bad day as a parent, can we just go ahead, raise your hand right now, because I'm gonna go ahead and put up both hands, and if y'all can see my feet, I would put those up as well. Okay, so if you
ever felt like you didn't have what it took. That's my other hand.
Right. If you felt like you didn't have what it took to do this, put both your hands up. Listen, we are there. We are there with you. And so thank you so much for sharing that.
All right, yeah.
Thank you all for participating in this SEL opener and for allowing your voice to be heard during this time. And all the chats and the encouragement that's happening right now in the chat box, I appreciate that as well. So go ahead and move forward. So our objectives today, we always start off with pretty, yes, we're going to tackle this today. We got this today. And then we get in it and we're like, oh gosh, it's only an hour and it goes by so fast when you're having fun, right? But our objectives for our time together today is that for you to be able to engage in practical steps, strategies to increase the recognition of emotions, thoughts, and values, right? So we'll talk about emotions, we'll talk about values and core values. Recognize how emotions, thoughts influence behavior, decision-making, and practice. So Cynthia will walk you through the emotion cycle and what's taking place when we're feeling an emotion. We'll also develop strategies to serve as an emotion coach for our children. And so we're super excited about that. So that's what, lots of meat today. Here is our SEL wheel, which is a picture of all the competencies when we're talking about social emotional learning. And you'll remember from our first session that social emotional learning is a process. It's lifelong, right? We're constantly in a space where we're learning and growing and reflecting, right? And so when we're talking about self-awareness, that's being able to identify your emotions, self-management, being able to manage your emotions. And so that orange part is all about us, right? All about you and how you do things in your daily life as an individual. And as we move to green, that starts involving other people, which we will get there. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. But then yellow is responsible decision making. That's the threader. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide as well. So self-awareness and responsible decision-making are the competencies that we are going to focus in on today, right? And so self-awareness, the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, right? Thoughts and values and how they influence your behavior, the ability to accurately access one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and growth mindset. So being in that space, again, even as adults where we are, constantly saying, hey, how can I grow? What can I do differently? What supports do I need in order to make me successful? So being able to do that, being able to say, you know what, this is a strength of mine, even in parenting. I know what my strengths are. I'm still developing my strengths, of course, but I also know what my limitations are. And I know when I need to raise my hand and ask for some help because I can't, right? And so that's important too, a huge part of parenting. And so then as we move to responsible decision making, the ability to make constructive choices each and every day about personal behavior and social interactions based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. So our ability to be able to identify problems, analyze problems, evaluate problems, reflect on problems, reflect on solutions, right? Not only for just ourselves, but also for our kids as well. And then thinking in all situations, what is your ethical responsibility for yourself? What is your ethical responsibility for your kids? Like what decisions do you need to make that's gonna be best for you and them, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about responsible decision making. And so now we're going to watch a quick video about self-awareness, and hopefully it will just wrap up what we're going to be talking about today. So join me in watching this video.
For children, learning is a social and interactive process that takes place with teachers, other students, and parents. Our emotions and relationships affect how and what we learn. Students are far better prepared to succeed in school and in life if they have learned social and emotional competencies in addition to academic skills.
We know that when kids have strong social and emotional learning skills, that they are better able to achieve academically, better able to work with others on a team, to collaborate, to manage conflict, to manage stress, to achieve goals. They have better life outcomes. So it's critically important that we take this seriously if we want to educate the whole child.
Social emotional learning is basically the focus on social emotional skills, how to interact with others, how to understand yourself, how to be able to behave in a way that you're supposed to in the right settings.
When we think about self-awareness, we're thinking about how do I know and understand myself, my emotions, my thoughts, my cultural identity, what are the ways in which I feel about a certain situation, why might I feel that way, how do I understand myself and how I fit into my family and my community and the broader world. We want to give kids opportunities to really think about their own experiences, their own emotions, and how they are dealing with those things.
Self-awareness is really being in touch with oneself. I think as a parent, the best thing you can do is to be honest about how you're feeling, because kids look at us as we're invincible. You know, we're perfect, and we're not. And so I think having honest conversations about your struggles, whether it's at work or, you know, a goal that you're trying to achieve and the challenges that you're having in achieving those goals, kind of brings your situation down to their level so they know they're not alone and that it's normal to kind of feel these different things.
One of the things that we work on when we talk about self-awareness is helping students understand emotions. So teaching the vocabulary for emotions, teaching students to think about what different emotions feel like, and being able to name that for themselves is an important part.
As teachers and adults, we need to go to the next level. And that goes all the way to junior high and high school. There's things called emotion wheels, where you have all sorts of words that even as adults we can look at and say, oh yeah, that's a great word for that emotion. So really being able to help them identify their emotions is huge and give them vocabulary that's challenging them. Secondly then, what do they do with those emotions? What gets you nervous? Or when do you feel stressed out? Or when do you feel angry? Well, I feel angry when Johnny takes my truck. What do you do about it then? But in high school, the same type of thing applies. If I see my friend Stephanie talking to Lisa or sitting with her at lunch, what do I feel? I feel jealous inside. And then asking myself, is that really a big problem? Is that a small problem? In a classroom, we can model that for kids. So as a teacher, I can say, I'm really feeling disappointed today, fill in the blank. And maybe I'll even take some deep breaths, or gosh, everyone's really loud today. We couldn't go outside for recess. I'm feeling frustrated. I need to take some deep breaths. So modeling that for kids is really important.
Also teaching kids this idea that through hard work, that they're able to be more successful, teaching a growth mindset as opposed to focusing on you're smart, but rather focusing more on effort, helps kids to understand better who they are. Self-awareness is something that is constantly growing, and we want to be able to give kids tools and messaging around how to be thinking about their emotions and their understanding of who they are.
So hopefully that gave you even more definition and more meaning as you think about self-awareness and what we're going to be talking about today. And so these are some key components that we have come up with as it relates to when you know yourself well and self-awareness, right? So understanding your core values, so important. Understanding your personality and understanding your emotions. Those are all like three components of self-awareness that is important as you think about parenting, as you think about how your parenting style, how your personality is different than that of your kids, right? And understanding how what your core values are and how they show up even in parenting, and then managing emotions on a daily when it comes to parenting is so very important. And so what we're saying is that when you do these things individually, when you understand what your core values are as a person, when you understand your personality as an individual, when you understand your emotions, that this will have an impact on how you're able to show up for your kids. And so, Cynthia, do you want to add anything to that before we move forward?
Went away. I didn't mean for that to go away. The only thing I would add is as we go through talking about these, to keep in mind that we're talking about social emotional learning is a process that we talked about in our previous definition. And so we're still working on our skills as well. So I want you to put on frames that are about you, yourself, the person, and about your child. And we'll try to pop back and forth to point that out to you, but really thinking about how you're developing and how you're helping your child to develop.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And so we're going to start off the night with talking about core values, right? And core values, they orient us, they drive us, they anchor us. It's kind of like just internal integrity that's taking place. And values are so very important. Part of parenting, values influence our behaviors and attitudes and affect our decision making every single day, right? So again, as we walk you through this activity, we want you to think about what orients you, what drives you, what anchors you, This activity that you are about to do is an activity that I have done with my 19-year-old and my 10-year-old. So it has given me even more information and insight about what the people in my household, what it is that they value, because I can think that they value something that they completely do not value, or I can think that because I value something, guess what, that they should too, or that they value that same thing. And what I found is that as far as it relates to our core values, right now they're a little bit different, right? But it does give us information about each other and each other within the household. So it's really good. So we're gonna go ahead and move forward. And what we want you to do is take a look at this list, right? And we understand that it's not an exhaustive list and that, you know, there may be some things that are not on here. But we want you to take a look at this list and we want you to choose 10 things that orient you, drive you, anchor you. What are the 10 things from this list that stand out to you, all right, as an individual, right? So right now I want you to think as an individual, what are the 10 things that stand out to you on this list, right? So I'm gonna give you 3 minutes to do this and we'll come back together in just 3 minutes. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes to choose the 10 things on this list that orient you, drive you, and anchor you. Yes, we are picking 10 of these on this list. Thank you so much. We are picking 10 on this list. All right, so here's a throwing a curveball. Now I need you to take that 10 and I need you to get it down to 5. Can you do that for me, Jenny? Can you get it down to 5? I need you to take that 10 and get it down to the 5 things that orient you, drive you, anchor you. What makes sure that you are in alignment? What makes sure that your internal integrity is, the meter is just it's going off, right? So what are the things that orient you, drive you, and anchor you? The 5 things. Once you have your 5 things, if you could give me utilizing the reaction button, if you can, just utilize the thumbs up, or you can let me know in the chat that you got your 5. All right, so now what I need to do, I've seen a few thumbs up. So now what I need for you to do is take that 5 down to 3. Y'all, what are the 3 things that orient you, drive you, and anchor you? When these 3 things are not present, regardless if you're at home, if you're at work, it does not matter. If these 3 things are not present, you are not feeling that self-alignment. You're not feeling like you are acting with integrity within yourself. So what are the 3 things that have to be present regardless of where you are? And once you have your 3, if you could go ahead and put those in the chat, once you have your 3. All right, so I'm seeing some come in. And Tawanda and Cynthia, if you all could help me read some of these. These are great.
I see a lot of peace coming in, faith, integrity,
Kindness a lot.
family. Yeah. Kindness, joy,
Fun.
achievement, collaboration. Yeah.
Family, honesty, humor.
Love it. Thank you all
Health.
for sharing that. So let me ask, if I can have a brave soul, how did you narrow your list down? Before we continue, how did you narrow your list down? If I could get someone to unmute and share how you got your list narrowed down, or you can share if, what was challenging about that activity.
I can share. I'll do it.
Thank
This
you.
is Bryce Louder.
Hey, Bryce.
So I think I took the approach of, is it ever okay to not do this thing? Like, kindness was pretty high on my list, and then I realized I don't always have to be kind, right? That's not always the goal in some of my interactions, right? And then I realized, okay, so that's gone. And that was sort of the approach that I took, right? Like, achievement, it would be nice, but like, you can live without it, was sort of how my list went. So that's how I ended up and I ended up with faith, family, and integrity, because those are things that those are the things I'd always feel bad without, I think, is how I landed on it.
Like, I love that. I love the approach that you took.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely love it. Like, what can I not be without?
Yeah.
Like, I love that. I love that approach. I don't know if I've had anybody ever break it down just the way that you did. And I love that. So thank you, Bryce, for sharing. Is there anybody else that want to comment as to the approach that you took?
I will. For me, some of it was, they were somewhat similar. You might be able to combine some of them. So like faith I had, but I also had hope and, nurturing. And I feel like that can kind of go together. So, just seeing where maybe I picked out words that had, could collaborate together. And so just trying to narrow it down that way.
Yeah, and that's what I did the exact same thing, Jenny. I was like, when I first did this activity, I was like, okay, what can I umbrella and put under one, right? So for me, like faith and family and friendship, and I would go through that process of feeling like, if I don't pick this, does it mean that I don't value it, or that it's not a part of who I am, and all of that? And so then I started looking for, okay, well, what sums up faith, family, friendship? What sums up that for me? And what I came up with was that connection summed it up for me. Like, I need to be connected in my faith. I need to be connected to my family. I need to be connected in my friendship. I even need to be connected at work, right? So if I don't feel that connection at work, Like I'll do it and do it well, but it won't be the same as if I have a connection to it, right? And so that's what I started doing when I did it. So thank you all for sharing, and thank you for putting that in the chat. And now we're just going to go. Cynthia, do we have time, or should we keep moving forward?
I think we should keep moving since they shared it here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want you to do, though, is to continue to think about these core values, and even, like I said, think about if how you can do those at home, and learn even more about the values of the people that are in your household and those that are around you, and think about how those values show up for you in parenting, right? So how do you, I know for me, like I said, that one of my values is connection. So for me personally, I can't let arguments linger, because then I'm not feeling connected to my kids. I can't let, when it's a situation where, you know, there's been a disagreement, or if I've done something wrong, I've always got to go back and figure it out and try to make it right. Even if it doesn't, you know, end up right in the moment, I've got to try, because that's one of my core values, right? Is connection and being able to thrive on that. And so we want you to think about it. Maybe we can start off with this at the next session next week, but thinking about, like, how is it that your core values show up for you in parenting? So we want you to take some time to do that, and possibly even share your core values with someone in your household. So thank you so much for engaging in that activity.
All right, so the next part of self-awareness that we're going to talk about is personality. And so when we're thinking about our personalities, we're thinking about how it is we like to be, how we like to operate in the world, at work, in our community, but how is it that we are? And so being able to recognize how it is that you are, you also have to think about the personality of your children. And so having for me, you can say with a thumbs up or in the chat box if you agree or disagree. I feel like this is a really sensitive area, because you want your children to be who they are. We want them to be who they are. We want to respect who they are as people, but we also want to nurture them and groom them into the types of adults we want them to be. And so there's a delicate balance in that parenting. And so to help with that balance, we have 4 tips on the screen to share with you. And so that first tip is to say, identify your child's temperament or personality. Think about it, how your child is and how they like to be. And if you have multiple children, notice how their personalities are different. So you may have some children who are introverted. You may have some children who are extroverted. You may have some that are very sensitive to how things happen in the world. Their emotions are sensitive, where other ones are able to be resilient and withstand things easier. And so when you start looking at their differences, you want to treat those differences with respect when they are working with you as a parent, and when you're working with each child. You're not expecting each child to be the same. And so then the second tip is understanding your personalities and where those are similar to your child. So once you identify your child's temperament, think about how that shows up together. And so are we in a space where, for example, I'll go back to introvert, extrovert. I am an introvert. I have 2 out of 3 kids who are extroverts. And so there are times when they want to be social and active. And I told a story earlier today about how my daughter wanted to be in the talent show, and she just has this super confidence about her. She doesn't have a shy bone in her body. So the idea of getting on stage and showing a talent that you may or may not have was like, that was anxious for me. Like, for me, there's no way I could do that. And the fact that she could, I actually felt proud, but I could have felt like, no, I don't think if I was trying to protect her, I might have tried to hold her back from doing that. I was actually, as it turns out, I was proud of her because that's something I could never do. But that is letting her be her and not letting my personality change who she is, which is kind of the third tip, is when we start thinking about how we manage our different personalities, try to separate out where I am trying to feel my need. And so if my child, again, needs to be social, and I need to be not so social, and I'm like, well, you want to protect yourself. You want to have that time for that reflection that I keep talking about. You want to stay in and think about things and reflect, and I don't let them go out and explore the world and engage. And I'm thinking that I'm protecting them when I'm actually just feeling my need, and their need is not getting met because they need to be social. And so then you start thinking about the responsible decision making in that is thinking about where can you balance that. I have a child that's introverted, and so I try to push her out more. But then how do I balance that so that she's still herself? Like, she doesn't want to go out more, and I don't either, so I get it. But if I never push her to go out, then is she building those social skills? And am I then not matching up their growth with that personality? So the self-awareness is understanding yours and theirs. The responsible decision making is how you mesh that when they're not in alignment. And then the responsible decision making is also in this advocating. The last tip is advocate for your child, because if they don't fit in, if their personality doesn't fit in to the norm in certain settings, including in your extended family, you're going to have to advocate for them, to allow for them to be themselves, because then you're helping them with their self-awareness. They're beginning to be self-aware of who they are, what their strengths are, and even where they need to grow. And so, the world, generally speaking, the world likes children to be quiet and obedient, generally speaking. If that's not your child and they're in a space, they're in a space where they're over, and I've dealt with this in my personal life. So my extreme, active, energetic, extroverted daughter, when someone is saying like, wow, she is really out there, or she's really this or really that, I have to speak up and say, nope, she's being who she is, and she'll learn balance as well. And so she'll learn balance as a goal, but I'm not going to allow her personality to be stifled because it doesn't fit the norm. And so that's a part of that responsible decision making as well. And so that's just a thought, something to think about. There are lots of personality tests out there, like you may have heard of, like Myers-Briggs, 16 personalities, colors, what's the other one? Compass points. And so you can take one, like 16 personalities is completely free. It's 16personalities.com. That's my plug because I love it. But it can help you learn more about your personality. I hadn't thought about doing that with my children, so I can't remember if it's appropriate for kids. I took it so long ago, but you can take it and build your own self-awareness. So if my colleagues have anything they want to add to personality before we move on.
No, I think it's just like, it's one of those just so important pieces, because I lucked up with 2 children in my household that have completely different personalities than me, right? And I'm still figuring it out. But I feel like that this is so helpful in thinking about that. And it's so important. I think that last piece to advocating for your child, and letting them, be able to show up as their authentic self, is so valuable and so very important.
So I was answering in the chat, but I'll just say it out loud about how you can identify your child's temperament. One way to do that is just kind of watch and see how they behave. Notice how they respond to things. And so when you're watching their behavior, you're watching how they socially interact, how they adapt to change, and how they adapt to emotions, and just making notes of how do they like to do that? How do they like to operate? There are some surveys out there that you can do, that you can Google for. I can't name one off the top of my head, that you can ask them questions that kind of help lead you, like Myers-Briggs does for adults. But you can, I picked up the things I picked up about my kids from observing them, talking to them, and engaging with them just through conversation. You can even just have dinner time conversation about how would you respond in this situation, or how would you handle it if well, we just had a big change. Like, how would you handle it if we didn't go to school for 6 months? So asking them questions like that at the dinner table is going to help you gauge their personality. And so if we can find a couple before we share this PowerPoint with GPA, we'll drop it in the folder, and GPA will be sharing with you this PowerPoint. So if I find a specific one that you can use, we'll add that. So I hope that answered your question a little bit. So the last element that we're going to talk about is emotions. Understanding your emotions is a big part of self-awareness, and it's a big part of this whole work of social and emotional development. That's what the E stands for. And so it's really important that we understand our emotions, and then help our children then understand their emotions. So we're going to talk about a few different ways to think about that. I do want to put a plug in for this movie. If you haven't seen it with your kid, it's a great movie to watch to help you talk and think about emotions. But one of the things that we want to think about with being self-aware about our emotions is being aware of when we're in a cycle. So this first part I'm going to talk about is this cycle of going from an event happening to having an action that we may or may not be happy with. And this cycle shows up most prevalently with intense emotions like anger, frustration, worry, stress, fear. That's when you typically see the cycle more, but it can show up in other ways too. It can show up with love, which is very pleasant, but we can go through a cycle with love as well. And so what happens is you have a prompting event. You have this thing that happens, and that thing that happens carries no meaning until we attach meaning to it. And so when we attach meaning to it, that's our interpretation. That's an important step to think about, because in that interpretation step, you are filtering that event through all of your stuff. You're filtering it through your core values, your personality, your experiences with situations like that, your experiences with people like that. So all of that is filtering through how you interpret that event. It's also important to note that when you're in that stage, you're telling yourself this story that may or may not be true, and you don't have external information. So in this step, you're not necessarily listening to other people. You're not paying attention to this specific moment in time. You're thinking about all the times this has happened, and you're telling a story that you're then responding to. And so that's important to note. So I'm going to give you an example as I go through the cycle. So in my house with our 3 kids, one of the things that we struggle with is keeping their rooms clean, and one in particular. And so this particular daughter just really struggles with keeping that room clean. And so the prompting event was, I went in her room and the room was a mess and she was downstairs watching TV. That's a trigger for me, because you're sitting downstairs watching TV as if you think your room is clean. And so that prompting event alone doesn't mean anything. The fact that her room is sitting there not clean does not mean anything. But I tell myself a story, because I've talked to her about this before. I know I don't like it when it's not clean. I get angry. So I'm already feeling angry because she's sitting downstairs. So I'm telling my story about that too. And so I tell myself that she doesn't appreciate us, and she doesn't respect us because she's not keeping her room clean. She's not taking care of her belongings. And I'm telling that story without her input, without asking her or finding out why her room isn't clean or why she's downstairs or what happened, or none of that information is taken into account. And so what happens next, the next 2 steps happen almost at the same time, and that's the physical response and the urge to act. Those things are instinctual. They just happen. Their purpose is to alert you. And so you have a physical response. And so in this story, my physical response is I'm feeling tension in my shoulder and heat in my face, and that's alerting me that I'm feeling angry or frustrated or whatever the word is that I'm going to attach to it. But if I was in a space where I was feeling stress and worry, I might feel it more in my stomach. I do actually feel it more in my stomach. And then I have an urge to act. So in my story, my urge was to call her upstairs and yell at her and fuss at her and get in her face. And so that urge to act, again, is instinctual. You're not thinking about it. And it may or may not be a good thing, and it may or may not be what you actually end up doing, but you do have that initial urge because you have to do something with the energy behind the emotion that you're feeling. And so from there, you act. Now, your action could be what you were urged to do, or it might not be. And your action could be productive, or it might not be, but you do something. And so in my story, I actually did what I was urged to do. I called her upstairs. I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm pointing in her face, and all the whole 9 thing, the nagging that came up earlier. And so once you've acted and released that energy, you have an after effect. Now, if your action was productive, if it was something that you can live with, you're happy with, then you go back to equilibrium. But if it isn't productive, you don't feel good about it, you're going to have another emotion, and the cycle is going to continue. So in my action with the yelling and screaming, I realize I am yelling and screaming, and she's staring at me like she doesn't know why I'm yelling and screaming, and she has tears in her eyes. And I realize that probably isn't going to get me what I need. The room is still a mess. Now she feels bad. I'm all tense. So that's not the effect I wanted. So now I feel guilty, which is another emotion, and my cycle continues. And so again, the self-awareness is recognizing when you're in a cycle so you can do something about it, and recognizing what is prompting you to behave in the way, what is prompting you to feel that way, because you can also do responsible decision making out of that. And so this is what can happen. This is what's important to know, is that emotions are temporary. They come and they go. They come and they go. They are here to give us information, and that the cycle can be interrupted. And so what you can think about, I'm going to go through this process again about what you can think about. So in that prompting event, it carried no meaning. And so by itself, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a thing that happened. But the interpretation is where we gave it meaning. So the interpretation step is the first place that you have an opportunity to disrupt the cycle and make an outcome that's going to be better. And so in that step, instead of telling yourself a story, you can tell yourself a story, and then you can think of alternate stories. Like, what else could be happening here? Why am I thinking this way? Why might the room be dirty? Or you can get more input. And so in my story, I just got more input. I just asked her why it was like that. And as it turned out, it was that she thought it was clean. So we didn't have the same definition of clean. And so that gets a different response than she doesn't respect me and she doesn't appreciate me. That's a totally different response. So I can change the cycle just by getting more information. A lot of times I can change it. You can change it by changing the story. So for me, when it's stress and worry, then I can change the story by just stop imagining what's about to happen and just think through alternative stories. And so that's a great place to break it up. The response, the physical response and the urge to act are early warning systems. And so when those happen, that's your thoughts, that's your like, oh, wait, something's happening in my body. I'm feeling something. I know my body feels like this when I'm upset. I know my body feels like this when I'm worried or stressed. And so I can stop and do something different. I can either go back to that interpretation stage and tell myself a new story, or I can go ahead and start planning what I'm going to do, how I'm going to handle it. And so once I get to that action step, I have had a chance to think about and change my action and get a better afterthought. And so this is one of our favorite quotes: between stimulus and response, there is a space. Between that prompting event and the action, you have space. And in that space is your power to choose your response. And in your response lies our growth and freedom. And I like that last part of that quote, because the growth is we're learning to control our emotions in a way that is productive, and that gives freedom. Like, we're not being driven by our emotions. There are times in my life where I've been driven by anger and being defensive and aggressive about certain things, and I don't have to let that have power over me. I can calm it down and think through other ways to handle it. And so that's a big part of emotion management. The other thing to know about emotions is how we name them. And so this is really important for a couple of reasons. We need to be able to name our emotions so that we can better manage them, we can better understand them, and we can think of alternate responses. So in that story, when I said that anger would get a different response from irritated or annoyed, so the intensity is lower, so it helps me then think better about how I manage that. Or it's not really sadness that I'm feeling fearful, and I can find out why I'm feeling fearful, and I can change that stance better than I could just being sad. And so it's really important to be able to name it, but it's also important for our kids because they don't always have the vocabulary. We don't always have the vocabulary, but our children are little people that are learning and growing. We need to help teach them the vocabulary to attach to their feelings and the behaviors that match. So if you get a mismatch, like if you have a child that is experiencing really stress high, I experience this in my work a lot in the school as a teacher and a principal, is high energy anger over a little small event. So I don't diminish the feeling, but I do help the child figure out that intensity of anger doesn't match I dropped my pencil down the drain, right? And so you have to help them learn how to put that together so they can then manage better. We know you can't read this on the slide, so we'll make that available to you. We did that one. We'll make that available to you. So we're coming in on the home stretch. So we're just going to talk the tips to go with the parenting style is thinking about that emotion coach, being a coach for your child when it's about emotions. And so there's research to suggest 4 different styles for managing or coaching your child with their emotions. And so the 3 on this slide are the 3 that we want to avoid. And I want you to notice that it didn't say don't do this, because we all slip and slide in and out of different spaces. And that's okay. We're learning and growing. We're human beings as well. And so what we're saying is try to stay out of these as much as you can, because it's not helpful. And then on the next slide, we'll show you what is helpful. So the dismissing, the disapproving, and the laid back style of coaching for emotions. Dismissing is when we're sending the message or saying the words to children that their emotions don't matter. And it comes out of a space of their kids. They're kids, they don't have any challenges in life, they don't have any worries. And so we just kind of just tell them your feelings aren't really feelings, you're fine, go sit down somewhere. And so that is what that's sending the child is a message that, well, I'm having this feeling, but I'm hearing that it's not really a feeling. Then they begin to feel like something's wrong with them because they have it, or there's something wrong with the feelings because they're not supposed to have it. And so they don't learn then to manage out of that. The disapproving parent is the one who says, that treats emotions as a weakness or a distraction or being manipulative. And so like that weakness, for example, is a lot of times laid on boys, where boys aren't supposed to express their emotions or their feelings, and they're weak if they express emotions. That being manipulative is often laid on girls, that she's trying to get her way. She doesn't really feel this way. She just wants me to do this or that. Or it's labeled as they're trying to be disobedient. They're just trying to get out of whatever it was I wanted them to do. So those labels cause confusion for the child, because they have a feeling and they're getting a message of something negative related to the feeling, and they don't know how to put that together. So again, they end up not being able to manage their behaviors. And then the laid back parent is the one who does accept that, yes, you feel sadness, yes, you feel angry, yes, you feel frustrated, but they don't go further than that. And so they don't then show the child what to do with that, or help the child figure out what to do with that emotion. So that child ends up having trouble focusing because they have all these feelings, all these emotions floating around, because they've been encouraged to, feel them and express them, but they don't know what to do with it. They also have trouble making friends, because their friends don't know how to take them, because their emotions are all over the place. And so they're all over the place. They're not calming down any emotion, and they're just kind of layering on, and they don't learn to regulate their emotions. And so you can see across the 3 that they don't learn to regulate their emotions in these parenting styles. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen or come up, but we want to try to stay away, because we want our kids to be healthy emotionally. And so we want to be the coach for our children. We want to help them think through how to recognize, name, and manage their emotions. And so I'm not going to read all of these to you. I'll just kind of pull them out. Is we want to listen and use that as an opportunity. Have the conversation with them when they're feeling something, and help them kind of process what it is that they're feeling, why they're feeling that way, and what the options are about what to do with that. And you do want, as a parent, we want to make sure we're giving them options of how we would handle them to have a productive outcome, without telling them what to do or that they don't have the emotion. We want to validate that you feel what you feel. So going back to that angry one that I used before, where I said that the anger didn't match the behavior. So rather than saying you're not angry or you're not supposed to be angry, okay, you feel angry, but let's think through how that behavior matches your intensity of anger. And you kind of talk them through and help them process that, because then you're going to get this stuff on the right. You're going to get a child that trusts you because you listened and didn't dismiss them. They're going to trust their feelings and use that as information, because we didn't give them a message that they don't count, that those feelings don't count. And they'll learn to solve problems, which is the ultimate goal. We want our children to be able to move in the world when they move beyond us, and be able to solve problems, and be able to maintain good relationships and high self-esteem. And so that's the kind of coach that we're wanting to be for our children. And so in next week's session, when we go to self-management, we'll talk about emotions some more, with how do we practice breaking up that cycle? How do we help our children think about the appropriate outcomes for their emotions? But for this session for today, we're just at 7 o'clock. So this slide just sums up what our goal was for today: is self-awareness and responsible decision-making, knowing yourself and responsible decision making. We make hundreds of little choices every day. We make hundreds of responsible decisions every day. If you want to make the best, most responsible decisions, you need to know yourself. And so we talked a little bit about each of the areas that we mentioned, how they help you make decisions. And so that's, again, why it's a continual process, is that we're continuing to develop these skills so that we can improve our responsible decision making. So before we do our closer, I'll pause and see if I left anything out on the emotions that my colleagues want to share, and then we'll do our optimistic closure, and we'll let you go for the evening.
No, I think I don't want to take more time. I think you covered it.
Okay. All right. So for our optimistic closure, what we want you to do is just kind of think about, this is called modeling SEL at home. And so we want you to think about what you're going to do between now and the next week, we'll say. We want you to think about one thing that you can do with this information from today that helps you move forward, either with your self-awareness or helping your child with their self-awareness, or just thinking about a specific piece, like your emotions. So when you look at these options, you see the verbs in the darker blue. And so you can identify, you can practice identifying and naming emotions, whether that's with you or your child. You can ask for feedback. You can admit your mistakes. You can identify your strengths and limitations, again, with you or with your children. You can build your self-awareness and think about how it impacts your emotions, impact your children. And you can notice events, and you can notice how your body works, and you can notice your behaviors and or your child's. And so just thinking about that, if you can put in the chat box, or you can unmute and share what you would do that you can commit to doing with this work today. So for example, Tawanda has already shared that she's going to ask for feedback. You and Latrell are braver than I am in that one. I haven't done that one yet.
Yeah, I do that all the time, Tawanda. And, you know, I have to brace myself, because that goes back to that self-awareness piece of, you know, you could be thinking that you are knocking it out, and then they will tell you, honey, you need to reel it back in, because you are not doing great at this. You do not do great at this.
I'm going to get there.
I agree.
To commit to helping my children identify their core values, because I haven't done that. I've done it myself. My husband did his, but we haven't done it with the kids. So we're going to do that. I see in the chat box, if you all want to share out, Tawanda or Latrell, what you see in the chat box.
Notice body responses, identify core values.
Awesome. Ooh, Dean said he always asks for feedback. Whew, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to do it.
I love that. It's like he says, it's a good way to better understand my kids and myself, and be accountable for how I respond to them.
That's good.
That's good. Accountability with your kids. That's like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Estella says, I will try to identify and discuss strengths and limitations. Yeah. And I think that's so powerful too, because again, it goes back to, you know, when we admit like, hey, I'm struggling today. Like this, where we are right now and what's taking place in this moment, I am struggling. And so being able to have those real conversations with your kids helps them be able to process as well. So, you know, of course, utilize responsible decision making, but, you know, being able to share, you know, some of that with your kids, I think is very meaningful and impactful, and allows for a lot of great conversation. Someone says, notice my body responses and behavior. And I see someone else says, ask my daughter what she is feeling when she comes to me stressed. I will share my feelings about challenging things so she knows it's okay to struggle and it's normal. You all are awesome.
Y'all are on it. Those are some great goals. Thank y'all so much. All right, so thank y'all for sharing those again and setting your goals and your for your next time. And we thank you for being here with us. And so speaking of feedback, we would like some of yours. And so if you could please, even if you did it last week, if you could do it again this week and just give us feedback on this session. And you can capture the QR code or the bit.ly at the bottom. We did see feedback last week that told us that you like the engaging activities. So we will try to continue to make it engaging. Someone shared that it was fast-paced, but that they liked it fast-paced. So if it's too fast-paced, let us know that as well. But since they said it was good, we're going to keep right on rolling. But so we really appreciate that feedback, and we will use it to adjust our next few sessions for our time together. And then if you could also capture our, if it'll go, our contact information if you should need us for anything. We will make the PowerPoint and a couple of handouts that we mentioned available. We will send that to Guilford Parent Academy and have them send that out to you all in whatever way they shared the link for this session. But here is my and Latrell's email address. We also share on Twitter, so you see our Twitter handles and our department Twitter handle. Feel free to follow us, tag us when you're doing stuff and sharing stuff that you are that you think fits SEL, and because we love to learn and grow from you all as well. And I just want to say thank you again for showing up again and spending your evening with us. We know that time is valuable, and the fact that you gave us an hour and 6 minutes of it is a gift, and we really appreciate that. And I will let my colleagues say their goodbyes, and then we'll hang back for anybody who might have questions for us.
Now, as she said, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We hope that you will come back and join us for a fourth time, for those of you that this is your third session. And for those of you that's your first or second, we hope that we see you again next week. When we say that as parents, this has changed the game for us. And I feel like we've always been pretty reflective and in our parenting, but I think that it just allows us to be even better, right? It allows for us to be able to have even more tools. And so we hope that you will join us. We hope to tell a friend and bring a friend. We do this session at 11:30 on Mondays, from 11:30 to 12:30, and then we do it again at 6 to 7. So thank you, Guilford Parent Academy, for setting this up and for collaborating with us during this time. And again, as Cynthia said, we'll hang out for any questions that anybody has if you want to unmute and ask any questions. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And don't forget to love on yourself, hug yourself, and say you are doing better than you think you are. So if you have to look in the mirror and tell yourself you are doing better than you think you are, do that. I have to do it almost every day, y'all. So like, so thank you so much.
We will be here if there are questions.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you. Thank
you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, friends. Even as an educator, this is extremely informative. I teach this stuff, talk about it to my college students, but to have it mentioned back to yourself to be accountable as well, it's extremely helpful to have it. And I picked up a couple of new things that I'll be utilizing as well in classes. So I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Yay!
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, you want to stop recording?
Thank you for saying that, because I sure forgot.